Good afternoon and good evening, everyone. Thanks a lot for joining us tonight. I'm Varun Sriram with Generation UCAN, and we are here today for a UCAN talk show. And certainly couldn't do this by myself. Thrilled as always to be joined by Karin Hosenfeld, board certified sports dietitian, VP of nutrition for UCAN. Karin, what is cooking?
Hey everyone, I'm super excited to have you on. We're going to talk about how to use UCAN, how to get the most out of it, whether you have just started using UCAN or been using it for a couple of months.
Sweet, Karin, and you are certainly going to give us a lot of your personal insight as you've been using UCAN and recommending UCAN to a variety of clients in your private practice prior to joining us at UCAN for about 5 or 6 years now. So you've got a host of experience in terms of recommending and helping people understand how to use UCAN for a variety of different situations. And we really want to make this interactive and make this a service to you and the audience that are here with us. So if you guys have any questions, we're going to be on with you here for about the next 35 to 40 minutes. If you guys have any questions for us, feel free to fire them away in the chat. If you guys want to come on live and share your experience with myself or Karin, actually talk to us, imagine that, then let us know in the chat as well, and we'll be happy to bring you on so we can talk to you directly. So Karin, let's start actually in a little different way than we normally start. I wanted to ask you, over the years and even more recently, as you've been incorporating UCAN into your routine for a variety of different purposes, what's kind of the favorite thing you've converged on, your favorite way to use UCAN as part of your day?
Yeah, for sure. Listen, Varn, I want to first of all say thank you to everybody for joining us, but also to assure you that you've made a life-changing, excellent decision. If you're just starting to use UCAN, when you first start to use it, you might think, is that the UCAN that's making me feel so amazing during the day, giving me steady energy during my workouts? And then when you use it again a couple of times, you think, oh my gosh, it is the UCAN. And it really can be very life-changing for that reason, and all the different reasons that we're going to talk about how you can use UCAN. And I've been on the ground for 6 years talking to people about UCAN and how amazing it is, because I have gotten so many good results from it, and I want you to have those results too out there, that I want you to be assured that you've made a great choice. Now we just want to give you as much information as we can in a short amount of time, and I can't wait to get some of your questions. I'm really excited to answer some of your actual questions. So Varn, let me answer you about how I use UCAN. When I first got introduced to UCAN, it was because I have I get really bad cramps when I work out if I eat a lot. And when I say a lot, it was more than maybe like one banana. So when I came across UCAN, I was told that it was really easy on the GI tract before a workout. So that's why I started using it. But then what I found was I started to recommend it to a vast variety of people, and I myself started to use it at different times of the day too, and experiment with not just using it before a run or weightlifting session or a workout in a class setting at a gym, but I started to also use it, and so I still do today, maybe in the middle of the afternoon when you're just kind of dragging and you're at work and you're trying to focus. And we all have it. 99% of the people that have come to see me in my private practice have said this. It's 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon and I'm tired and lunch has run out and I'm not making it to dinner, and unfortunately then we're making unhealthy choices. So I definitely use it in the morning to get me going, because who has time to make a huge breakfast? I wish I did. But I use it then as a shake, and Varn, we can definitely talk some more about that, because I know you're master of the shakes with UCAN too. And I use it in the afternoon, whether it's if I have the powder around or just a bar. It's so easy to grab a bar, and all of us at UCAN are totally addicted to our bars. So we walk the talk, and we use UCAN too. We love it.
Yeah, Karin, I think it's funny. I mean, what you're saying is kind of similar to where I've really found the most benefit and application of UCAN throughout my day. And it's kind of interesting. If we look at the chart on the screen, you know, the uniqueness of UCAN is the superstarch, which is the carbohydrate, the energy source in UCAN. And if you look at the red line, the idea with the superstarch compared to your traditional sugars or high glycemic carbs is that it's very slow releasing. So it's maintaining your blood sugar and maintaining your energy for an extended period of time. Now, when I joined UCAN back in 2010, certainly the people that were using it and hearing about it were primarily coming from the distance world, marathoners, triathletes. So this idea of maintaining blood sugar was kind of something that those people were really latching onto to help them get through their long workouts. But as we learn more and more about the product and us talking to more, smart people, people like yourself, Karin, who, we were chatting with and collaborating with far before you worked for UCAN, there were so many people just talking about the importance of managing and maintaining your blood sugar throughout the day, just from a energy efficiency standpoint, so you feel better. So really what I found to be my favorite way to use UCAN is like you mentioned, first thing in the morning when you're trying to get ready, get out the door, or just start your day off right. You want something that's going to sustain you without making you feel sluggish, without making you feel too full, without giving you those sugar spikes. And like so many people, you're grabbing breakfast on the go. It's easy to gravitate towards muffins and bagels and kind of those carbohydrate-rich foods that'll really wreak havoc on your blood sugar. So for me, the biggest application of UCAN was really adding a scoop of UCAN into my morning smoothie with some protein, some spinach, some avocado, some unsweetened almond milk. Starting the day off with that, I found is really given me that balanced energy and that balanced blood sugar for the first 4 hours of the day to really get the day off to a productive start. So I think similarly to you, Karin, and maybe that you even helped contribute to my thinking about using UCAN in that way. I've been really enjoying just incorporating it into my breakfast to start the day off with that steady feeling.
That was a great recipe. So I know there's people out there who are like, wait, hold on a second. Go back and tell us slowly what's in your shake, because there's an important point about that too. And I want you guys to listen. There's no other carbs that Varn's going to be mentioning in that shake because it's a different way of thinking about the shake. We don't start with a whole bunch of fruit that's going to raise our blood sugar. UCAN is the carbohydrate in that shake. So Varn, tell us again what was in your smoothie in the morning.
Yeah, totally, Karin. And I think what you just clarified and said is a really good point, just in terms of how to think about UCAN. And this really, I will share that shake here in just a moment, but I think that's so applicable, like whether you're an athlete using UCAN in the context of a workout, or you're just using UCAN, outside of a workout in a smoothie to start your day. It's really like understanding UCAN is your carbohydrate. So you don't need to have, a bagel and a banana plus UCAN, or if you're making this, if you're going to work out, for example, if you're going for a long run, or I know we have runners and triathletes in here, like UCAN is that carb. And so same deal with a smoothie, right? You don't need to do UCAN and a whole bunch of fruit. UCAN is giving you that steady energy and that controlled energy. So usually the way I like to think about it is, if I'm using one of the UCAN flavors with the added protein in it, usually say the chocolate or the vanilla cream UCAN, along with that, I'll add some unsweetened almond milk, some spinach, just to give me the nutrients and the greens, some avocado, healthy fat to help keep me full, maybe a tiny bit of fruit just for flavor, like a quarter of a banana, and then the UCAN powder. That'll give me the energy sustaining carbs as well as the added protein. So kind of just building your smoothie that way, thinking like UCAN is going to give me that steady energy, and then everything else I add should either contribute to satiety, whether it's a healthy fats, or should have some nutritional value in it, where I'm adding the spinach or the greens. So I got to ask you, Karin, as a dietitian, is my shake dietitian approved? Am I doing it right?
Yeah, it definitely is. And when you add a little bit of fruit, like you said, we're talking about, because, if you're asking yourselves out there, well, how much fruit can I add? Typically, when people start to come to see me, they'll say, well, I start with 2 cups of fruit. And what they're not understanding is, because people think, well, fruit's healthy, right? What they're not understanding is how much that can spike your blood sugar. And I always say what goes up must come down. And, you were talking a minute ago about top athletes and people who run long distances. they're very in tune with their blood sugar and how they feel, because they've hit those walls before and it doesn't feel too good. And they call it bonking, not good. We want to avoid that. The UCAN helps them to avoid that, but they already know how their body's going to respond. Most people, I believe 98% of the population, are out there walking around not really understanding how UCAN really affects their blood sugar. When you're feeling low and sluggish and tired and not making those mental connections in the middle of the afternoon, that's your blood sugar going down. And yeah, it's a great little diagram here, because that sugar crash, we say sugar, I mean, it's when you're taking in, and back to the example of the fruit, could be anything, those things that you mentioned, the bagel, the muffin, a lot of the carb stuff that we grab in the morning and out the door, or we see it in Starbucks when we're grabbing a coffee and we just grab some carbs. What's happening is it's not setting you up for a good rest of your morning. Those things will last you for like an hour, and tell me you're not hungry again after about an hour or so. So that's why we start with the UCAN. Trust the UCAN. It's working for you in the background, and it'll stay there in the background. Give it a few minutes, 15, 20 minutes to really settle in, and you're going to notice this feeling, this just good, clean, stable energy feeling. And when I say stable energy, it could be for any activity. You could be lifting weights, you could be going to play racquetball, you could be going outside to play with your kids or swimming with your kids this summer. Be any activity, or even just sitting at your desk. We just don't want you to have low blood sugar and not get through the day, with that low blood sugar.
And if you hear Karin and I sound like a broken record over the course of the next, several minutes, in the sense that you hear us talking about blood sugar, blood sugar, blood sugar, I mean, there's really a reason, right? Like, keeping your blood sugar steady is fundamentally what UCAN is designed to do. And keeping your blood sugar steady is really something that's going to positively impact your energy. So when we have blood sugar fluctuations, what are we really talking about, right? Like we see on this diagram, we're really talking about energy fluctuations, which nobody wants to experience that throughout their day. And whether you're an athlete, whether you're just going to work, whether you're trying to get through your family responsibilities, if we can all control our blood sugar and have that consistent energy, I mean, you're going to feel good doing whatever it is that you're doing. So that's how you want to think about UCAN. It's a tool to keep your blood sugar steady. And the reason we're starting here today is just, again, to clarify that, for those of you that found out about UCAN, maybe it was at your local store, you saw it on the wall next to a bunch of other sugary products, or you learned about it at an expo, in the context of a lot of other kind of sports fuels. UCAN is very, very different than all these sports products you see out there. Like, nobody in their right mind, or I should say no dietitian especially, maybe people that work for these different companies, but nobody would be suggesting that you incorporate any of these sugar-based powders into your morning smoothie. I mean, that would be insanity. So that alone should tell you that we're talking about something very different here when we're talking about kind of the application of UCAN and the way it works. Certainly it's a very effective fuel source for your long training and your long activities, and we're going to get to several questions here shortly concerning that you guys had, but it's also an extremely powerful tool to incorporate into your day to control your blood sugar. So Karin, knowing that we've got some questions from some endurance athletes in the radar, can you kind of just speak to, for say the person that isn't training for several hours, the best ways to incorporate UCAN into their day, and why they might want to consider incorporating UCAN into their day? And then after that, we'll get to the questions from folks that are out there training for several hours.
Yeah, absolutely, Varn. A lot of times people are introduced to UCAN, and you might be out there as well thinking, well, it's because somebody told me about it. Maybe I'm not a marathoner, but I do a 5K, and I just want to, have some extra energy for that, and someone told me about it or whatnot. You might not be training every day. Maybe you use it for your workouts. Maybe you did hear that you can use UCAN as well to control your body fat percentage and your body composition. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well, because frankly, a lot of athletes have come to me and said, well, and I call everyone that's working out on a regular basis an athlete. You're an athlete. If you, make a concerted effort to get out there and work out whatever the case may be in that effort for 30 to 60 minutes, at least, 5 times a week, then you're definitely an athlete. So I just want to get that out there as well. A lot of those people would come to me, whether they're marathoners or triathletes or whatever, and they say, I need to lose 30 pounds. I mean, it's getting hard for me to run or perform in whatever even sport that they're doing because of that extra body fat that they have on board as well. So if that's the case, and if you happen to think, well, I could use UCAN for weight management purposes, then here's how I recommend it. Because I just like to give you the nuts and bolts. Like, this is how I definitely recommend it. You can use it in your morning smoothie or shake, as Varn had mentioned. Sometimes, honestly, if I'm just in a really big hurry, I've got 2 kids, I'm running out the door in the morning, I don't have time even to blend a shake. I know it sounds crazy. But if that's the case, I have my UCAN blender bottle. I throw some water. Maybe if I have a minute, I will throw in my unsweetened almond milk or unsweetened coconut milk. I might throw that in there. And then I do my scoop of UCAN with protein, so the UCAN with protein, and I might add a little extra of my own protein just to make it a high protein, shake, and I blend it up just in my blender bottle and I run out the door. I just don't have time. Even if you just did that and one other time per day. So I like to tell people you have 2 choices, just because to make it easy. You can do a bar in the afternoon that'll help bridge you between that lunch and dinner time, that dreaded time of the day that's hard for you to get through because your energy level is low and you just want to leave work and get home and crash. Great, we have the picture of there's different flavors of the snack bars. So you can do that at that time of the day, middle of the afternoon, or you can do it after dinner as a dessert. Now I say this because a lot of people would come to me and say, Karin, my worst sweet tooth is at night and it's after dinner. So what I recommend is about an hour after dinner, give your dinner a little bit of time to digest, and when you would normally have a dessert, you're going to grab one of these. I mean, it tastes like a dessert actually, but UCAN snack bars, and they're less than 200 calories, and that energy is going to last you a couple hours through the evening before you go to bed. It's because it keeps your blood sugars low, and we talked about that concept, keeping blood sugars low. It cuts out your cravings. So you feel okay. You don't feel like, wow, I need to eat sugar at this time of the night. And that is very, very helpful. So those, pick one or the other for your UCAN snack bars, and then do your smoothie in the morning. And that helps tremendously with weight management.
That's a great perspective, Karin. And I think the last point that you made was so key. I mean, there's a million different bars out there, and certainly, anybody could say, eat this bar after dinner, and that's all well and good. But the specific reason you'd be implementing a UCAN bar in the situations Karin's talking about, like if you do struggle with cravings at that time, it all comes back to the blood sugar, right? If you're having a bar with 15 or 20 grams of sugar and you're trying to use it to curb hunger or curb cravings, it's just not going to cut it. You're gonna get that spike and that drop, and you'll be hungry, likely an hour later. So that's really it's the super starch, which again makes UCAN so different than your other protein bars that may have very few carbs and maybe very low in sugar, but aren't going to sustain your blood sugar. Or you contrast them against your high sugar bars, 15 or 20 grams of sugar. This is going to be a much better option for controlling your blood sugar, maintaining that steady energy, and also curbing and managing that hunger. So couple great tips, Karin, on different ways to use it.
And I would say the second type of person that's our non-athlete that we're talking about is a person who maybe you don't have any weight management issues. Maybe you're not using UCAN to, control your hunger or things like that in general. And you're, thinking, well, I'm okay, but that steady blood sugar is equal to steady energy that across the board, I mean, we know this through surveys, studies, across the board, people have energy issues. And that's when their biggest complaint, I'm running out of energy. Either I start my day hungry and tired, or just, exhausted, and I feel like I didn't sleep good the night before. And that is where UCAN can help. If you're not an athlete and you don't have weight management issues, but my goodness, I know a lot of you out there during different times of the day have energy issues and low energy issues. I know that because I've been dealing in practice with people for 12 years. I know what people complain of, and it's that low energy. And the UCAN bars have a purpose, and so do the UCAN powders. So definitely take advantage of them.
Karin, let's see if we can get some audience participation. Damon has a question that he sent us, and is going to be kind enough to come on and chat with us. Let me see if I can make technology work. Damon, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Fantastic. Hey, Damon, thanks so much for joining us. So I know you had a question as well. Before you ask the question, I'd love to kind of hear just how did you get introduced to UCAN? How did you hear about it?
Well, I'm a physician. I actually heard about this starch when I was in medical school because I learned about the glycogen storage disorder that kids have.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
Yeah. So when I saw the product available, I was really interested in it because I try to eat a diet that is kind of a paleo type diet, but low on meats and just heavy on vegetables. Really try and watch the blood sugar spiking things, and so my challenge is to try to get nutrition in when I'm going on 5- and 6 hour long bike rides and things. And so I've been using the super starch and the bars, and yeah, I noticed that if I use the starch for more than 3 doses or so, I tend to get some crampiness. And so I'm wondering, is it just such a complex carb that I'm just not able to digest it well? Should I use the bars instead, or just wondering if you had any suggestions for that?
Great question, Damon. And we're going to try to troubleshoot this here, but let me just ask you one more question, if you don't mind. So when you're using the UCAN powders, can you kind of describe like what your protocol is? Like, did you have like a rough sense of like how much you're taking and kind of like the intervals you're taking it at? Are you sipping on it? Are you drinking it all at once? Just a little more clarity there, if you don't mind.
Drinking two scoops at once every 90 minutes.
2 scoops at once every 90 minutes. Okay. And then when you talk about the crampy feeling, would you say it's like, is it like actual cramping, like you feel like your leg muscles are tightening up, or would you say it's more of like a stomach kind of discomfort or kind of bloating type of effect?
Abdominal bloating, and then I tend to be gassy after the workout, and such. So it's almost like I've eaten something that just is really hard to digest.
Certainly. So I've got a few points, and Karin, I'm sure you have some feedback as well. So let me start with a couple things, and Karin, then I'll kick it over to you. So I would say one of the things to be mindful of with UCAN is in terms of the way the carbohydrate and the starch digest. It's a very large molecule, so it gets out of your stomach very quickly, and it's different than your simple sugar products that oftentimes require a certain amount of fluid to aid with digestion. So one thought that some athletes have experienced is when they're trying to consume, say, 2 scoops or 2 servings of UCAN all at once, if they're mixing it with, say, 8 or 10 ounces of fluid, so you're ending up chugging like 16 to 20 ounces of fluid over a short period of time. Oftentimes athletes find that can just all that fluid intake at once can cause some bloating and kind of that sloshy belly feeling. Now, that may or may not be what you're going through, so that's just one thought. So you could certainly, if you feel like that's kind of maybe what's happening, you could definitely try, mixing it with less water, making it more of a concentrated solution, and that might help avoid some of that gastric discomfort. Another thought I would just say is, given the nature of the starch, sometimes if you're consuming several servings over a long period of time, for a small amount of people, it can, just with the starch can cause some kind of gassiness or that gassy feeling. So the other thing that people have tried is perhaps instead of taking 2 full scoops at once, it might work better for you to take less at once and space it out. You might try a scoop every hour instead of 2 scoops every 90 minutes, and you know, kind of consuming less of the starch at once might help out with that. Karin, how about you? Any thoughts or suggestions on your part?
Dr. Damon, fellow cyclist, I'm so excited to talk to you. Do you take any UCAN before your rides?
Sometimes, yeah. But
Okay. So
that's kind of variable. I'm used to getting up and starting a ride, or I used to do a lot of triathlons and not eating anything. So the commonest thing is that I start with an empty stomach and then start taking this an hour or so, hour and a half ride.
the great thing about what we do when we work out is that we can experiment. So I definitely would love to hear back from you too about how things went. If you want to email me afterwards and just tell me how my suggestions, how Varden's suggestions have helped you too, you can. And anyone on the call, if you have a question that didn't get asked, you can email me at ucanrd@ucanco.com. ucanco.com. Here's how I have used UCAN for my long rides. And when I say long, I'm usually out there for 3.5 hours or so. I will do UCAN beforehand. So I will take the UCAN with protein beforehand. I'm 5'5", so I'm not a big guy, obviously. I don't know, your size, but normally cyclist men that I work with, they might take a scoop and a half beforehand. But for me, a scoop works just fine. And it's the UCAN with the protein before your ride. Okay. Then when I do that, it's 30 minutes before. I get all my gear together. I get, pumped up to go. I make sure my tires are ready. All the gear is ready. Then I go out on the ride. I use UCAN a little bit non-traditionally. It's not how we would typically say a beginner should use UCAN, but maybe there's some people listening that are cyclists too and might benefit from it as well. But I keep UCAN actually in my container, so my water bottles already mixed in, and I'm just sipping on it along at the front end of my ride. So I will have a scoop or two of UCAN in what turns out to be about 1.5 liters of fluids, and I mix my electrolytes in there. So I put the UCAN Hydrate, a couple scoops of UCAN Hydrate in there in my water containers, and I'm just saying it totals up to about 1.5 liters. I mix it all ahead, and I sip on it on the front end. I don't wait, because if you wait, it takes about 30 minutes to really activate, leave your stomach, go to your small intestine, start breaking off those carbohydrate molecules slowly over time. So I try and start within the first 10 minutes or so of my ride, sipping. And that could be every 15 minutes, about 3 ounces or so, 3 to 4 ounces. Again, I'm not a large person, so it might be a little bit more. But I say this because I don't want people to wait until they're thirsty and they're 45 minutes in and they're like, oh my gosh, my thirst just hit. Do it from the beginning of that ride.
So Damon, what's interesting is, like, to piggyback off what Karin said, when we originally were kind of recommending UCAN for endurance athletes, like we were kind of under the mindset that people are used to taking gels, or they're kind of used to this regimented feeding where it's like take a lot of something in at once and then wait for a given period of time and then take it again. So we very much in the beginning tailored our recommendations to exactly what you're saying you're doing. Take 2 scoops at once, and then the idea is, hey, I don't have to worry about it for 90 minutes. I think now, as we've gotten way more athletes, who've experienced the product, shared their feedback, I think we have a lot more people doing what Karin suggested. So whether it's simply because their stomach can't handle taking so much of the starch at once. So I would definitely say what Karin said is worth trying, whether it's to the extent that I said it, where you're doing a scoop, say every 45 minutes to an hour, or whether it's what Karin suggested and you're kind of just taking a big gulp of your bottle every 20 or so minutes. You could try spacing it out that way, and that might be a more palatable option for your stomach. And then just one last suggestion that I have that we didn't mention is a small amount of our flavors, the chocolate protein, the lemonade, and the pomegranate are sweetened with sucralose. Everything else is naturally sweetened, but for some athletes, especially endurance athletes that are having several servings of UCAN, if you were using one of these flavors, sometimes that sucralose, which is Splenda, a sweetener, can cause some of that gas and bloating. So oftentimes, cyclists or triathletes who have come to me with some of the challenges that you're facing, it'll be as simple as saying, hey, just use one of the flavors without the sucralose, and that'll alleviate the issue. So hopefully, Damon, there's a few tweaks in here that you might be able to incorporate that'll hopefully help you get past some of the challenges you've been facing. And then, if it is, which I don't know that it sounds like it, but if it was like an electrolyte or a cramping issue, that the only thing I was going to suggest to you was to add, the UCAN Hydrate product in, either just separately with your water, so you could sip on it, or just mixing it with your UCAN fuel to boost the electrolyte content of the fuel.
Right. Yeah, I definitely need the electrolyte. So no, that's very helpful. I'll try it on Saturday. Going for a 5-hour mountain bike ride. So we'll see how it goes.
Awesome. Well, hey, Damon, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, let us know how it goes.
Yeah, let us know. Let us know how we can help. I just posted Karen's email in the chat. So we're always accessible to make this work for you. And hey, thanks for breaking the ice and coming on.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thanks, Damon. Karin, let's while we're on this train, we had a couple other questions from some endurance athletes. So let me pose this one to you. This question we have is sorry, just queuing it up. All right, so this question is from Lauren. So Lauren says, I'm a triathlete and recently started using UCAN products for my training. I've loved ditching the heavy sugar products, and my body and stomach have felt amazing. And then she says, the recommendation seemed to be to take the serving, whatever size at once, and then repeat it at intervals. She says the hydration system that she has necessitates slowly sipping UCAN. What's the reason behind all at once? Would it be bad to consume it slowly over time? So this is actually very much along the lines of what we were just talking about. So I think we answered most of Lauren's questions in terms of like the theory of sipping versus taking it all at once. But let me ask you, Karin, just personally for you, why did you decide that the sipping option works better for you than the all at once approach?
It's that beauty of just kind of playing with it. But as you see, there were the two things that I do, which is I do take it beforehand. I wouldn't go out there without it. It just primes me for my activity, and it doesn't really matter if you're going to take a group fitness class at the gym or, like I said, go swimming with your kids or, run 10 miles. It's getting yourself ready for that activity and making sure that you have really good, beautiful, clean energy that's not, going to make you crash in a little while. So it's important if you're starting, let's say in that case with Lauren, great question, Lauren, by the way, you're starting that exercise, and let's just say you were going to sip on it and not do a feeding of UCAN 30 minutes before. You're not going to do a scoop. You're just going to start your exercise, and you're going to use UCAN like you would a gel or goo or what have you, a traditional one. Well, it takes a little while for UCAN to start to be, well, first of all, to exit your stomach, enter your small intestine, and start to break off those carbohydrate molecules that'll give you that steady energy. So if you're starting your workout, then you're already 30 minutes into your workout before it's really even starting to take effect. And if you're just sipping a little bit, it's not really going to be a large enough amount in a consistent manner to be able to give you the steady energy that you deserve. So I would say definitely do it 30 minutes beforehand. Try it out and see if that doesn't help you. And like Karin said, if it's just a matter of not taking a bunch of fluids in, because runners hate to be sloshy. Most athletes hate to be sloshy. So just do it with less liquid. I've done it, a whole scoop of UCAN with, 2 or 3 ounces before and just slammed it. So you can definitely try that out too, and it'll exit your stomach and you won't be sloshy.
Perfect. So yeah, so Lauren, hopefully to answer your question, just to put a bow on this, the like we talked about before, the all at once approach is something that a lot of athletes like, because it's like when you're doing the all at once with UCAN, you can really go an extended period of time without having to worry about constantly sipping something or constantly hitting something. But, you know, like Karin has mentioned, like we talked about with Damon and suggested for Damon, that having less and having it more frequently is totally fine. And just once again, to emphasize what Karin said, you know, if you do have the opportunity, still definitely try to get that serving of UCAN in before, because that'll just start you off with that smooth and consistent energy, that even blood sugar. And then, you know, from there, it's really, you know, then it's up to you. Whatever you're more comfortable with in terms of how you want to ingest it during is totally fine. Let's see. Let's bring Brian on here. He's got a question, and let me see if I can cue him up. Let me see here. Brian, are you there with us?
I am. I hope you can hear me.
We sure can. Brian, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Hi, Varn. Hi.
I'm doing fantastic, fantastic. Brian and I are in the same neck of the woods out here on the West Coast. So, Brian, I know you had a question as well, which I want to get to in a moment. But just give us a little background. How did you come to UCAN? How have you been using it?
I was, or am, ultra endurance cyclist, and a few years ago, I, did a number of events. But in the course, I think I came across the understanding that I could fuel my rides more effectively if I trained my body to use fat as a primary fuel.
Yeah.
So as I did that, of course, the same people that clued me into UCAN. So I started to experiment with UCAN to get my carbs in while I trained for fat adaptation, and just fell in love with the product.
That's fantastic, Brian. And hey, I know you had a question as well. I just wanted to lend a little bit of clarity to something you just said. So, when Brian's talking about trying to become more efficient at burning fat, for those of you folks that are maybe kind of following that school of thinking, you might think to yourself, hey, isn't it counterintuitive that I can ingest the carbohydrate, but it's not screwing up my ability to burn fat? And if you are somebody that's thinking that, you're right on with that thinking for your typical carbohydrate sources. So that is what's so cool about UCAN. In addition to that steady blood sugar that we showed previously, I just wanted to show one more chart. So the red line is our starch again, and what this is looking at is blood insulin. So anytime you consume a carbohydrate that's going to spike your blood sugar, your body releases this hormone insulin, and it's a storage hormone. And when your insulin's elevated, your body can't as efficiently metabolize and burn fat. So this is where the notion of, consuming carbohydrates will restrict your ability to burn fat came from. It's because most of these carb sources we're talking about are not going to regulate your blood sugar, and they're going to cause a rise in insulin. With UCAN, what's so cool is this super starch, because it doesn't spike your blood sugar, there's no reason for the body to produce this hormone insulin. So you can consume UCAN, you can get energy from a carbohydrate without screwing up your ability to burn fat when you're exercising. So that's like Brian figured out himself. That's a key benefit of UCAN is that it's an energy source that's not causing you to just burn off sugar. So Brian, sorry for that aside, but go ahead. Yeah, I know you had a question as well. Oh, did we lose Brian? Let me see. Got to unmute him. Let's see.
Here I am.
You're back. So go ahead, Brian. I know you had a question as well.
Right. So 14 months into it, I am pretty well fat adapted. But right now, and I use UCAN regularly, mostly in the afternoons to kind of, get me through the afternoon, and it works great. But I am looking now at changing my training routine. I'm going to be climbing some hills for a big ride in November. The intensity of my rides is going to, increase. So I know I'm going to need those carbs to get through the training. I just thought I'd check in with you and Karin to see what your recommendations would be around the timing of fueling with UCAN. So I have the carbs I need, but I can also maintain my fat burning.
Cool. So Karin, I'll give this one to you first. So I think one of the things too, just in reading Brian's written question also is kind of like just addressing that idea of fueling with UCAN as the intensity increases. So maybe you could hit on that topic for a moment, you know, and anything else that you want to add perspective to in terms of what Brian asked.
Yeah, I would say that's where that experimentation comes in as well, just kind of playing with it and seeing, because if you're doing hill work, I don't know if you're going to be then working at different altitudes as well. So that might be an issue where you're just kind of playing with, can I take a little bit more beforehand? Just remember, it's not that UCAN will then raise your blood sugar any higher, it's that it will work for longer. So we have a lot of different kinds of very explosive power sports, from power lifters who need a lot of extra energy on board to Taekwondo athletes that are going through, 7 rounds in a day spread out over, 8 hours of time. They're explosive sports that actually rely quite well on the energy that UCAN provides, because they're not feeling those dips and valleys, the peaks and valleys of regular blood sugar. However, we do, have a lot of people who say, well, it might actually help if I just take 1.5 servings or play with that and see, is it something that would help out in the long run? And if it turns out that you're feeling that you are struggling to make it through on that hill work because you're feeling that you have low blood sugar, you certainly can add other things to that regimen as well. We still have athletes that every once in a while will take something, not typically a gel or a goo, but a lot of cyclists, they do. They might take a piece of fruit or a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, half of one or something, if they need it as insurance. But from using UCAN, you don't have to do that as much, because you have that background stable energy that's kind of a catch-all that you're not going to crash and burn. But I mention that just because you don't have to feel like I can't ever have those things at a very high intensity if you've tried the UCAN regimen, tweaked a little bit, as I mentioned. Try serving and a half before you start, and maybe do 150% instead of 100% of what you're normally adding during your training, and see if that helps first. And then if you needed to, you can have another sort of carbohydrate source. But for you, since you're trying to keep that the carbohydrates low, it wouldn't have to be something very big at all, something pretty small. And 2 Fig Newtons will do that for you. And you should be able to at least power through that and feel. And I only mention that as a last resort because you're, like I said, that UCAN's acting in the background to make sure you don't bottom out. And we have lots of explosive sports that they don't use anything else but UCAN, and they get through just fine.
And Karin, I think that's a great perspective in terms of upping the amount, because especially as the intensity gets higher, like you may, your stomach certainly may be more sensitive to whatever you're putting into your stomach, as you're cranking out at a high intensity. So if you're able to kind of load up with a little more UCAN before and still have that consistent energy, later in your workout when you're cranking up the intensity, or throughout that whole period of time when you're exercising at a higher intensity, that could be a really, really good option. And
I would add on to that, Karin, though, that's important too, is sometimes that feeling of, low energy is really kind of a hunger feeling that might occur if the UCAN is starting at that point to wear off. And I say that because UCAN lasts for a different amount of time for every person. I mean, very well adapted people, the UCAN might last a little bit longer than your average person, or not. It might burn off faster. So if it happens to be a hunger issue, I know a lot of athletes, especially people that are specifically cyclists, that are doing the UCAN plus protein. It's not a massive amount of protein that's added to our UCAN plus protein products, and it's enough that it helps you and assists you in recruiting that muscle energy, but it doesn't, then you're not relying 100% on the carbohydrate of traditional carbohydrates. You still have the UCAN on board, but it helps to take away that kind of hunger feeling if that's what it is. So that's why I say you kind of have to experiment with those things first before you enter in other carbohydrate sources.
Brian, does that help out a little bit? Any follow up on your point? Any other questions on that?
No, that's terrific. I thank you very much. That's perfect.
Awesome. Hey, Brian.
Yeah,
Thanks for coming
report
on.
back.
Yeah. Let us know how it goes for sure.
Oh, you know it.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. Appreciate you coming on. And so, I would just add one more thing. Actually, is what's kind of interesting is that people have always assumed, or it's kind of been common notion that as the intensity of exercise gets higher, your body is more reliant on carbohydrate than fat, and that's undoubtedly true. But that's not to say that your body can't burn any fat even when you're going in an all-out sprint, and it's also not to say that these things can't be tweaked through nutrition. So if you're putting your body in the metabolic state to burn fat as you're doing higher intensity exercise, and that's something you're doing repeatedly throughout training, you'll find that your body needs less carbohydrate at these higher intensities. It's just like any other type of training, and these are things that you could certainly validate with testing, with something like a metabolic efficiency test, where you could actually you actually test what percentage fat, what percentage carb you're burning as you ramp up the intensity. So these are things you can validate through data as well, but even just keep in mind that if you're trying to become more efficient at burning fat, you might have to suffer through a couple crummy workouts, but putting yourself in an optimal fat burning state by controlling your blood sugar, even for these higher intensity exercises, it'll help you get to that point. Karin,
well, and here's the cool thing too that I would add to that too, because I think it's just important to know. If you and not a lot of people are doing the long or as intense workouts as Brian are, but even if you're doing a moderate intensity and even for a few hours, it could be a situation where if you are metabolically inclined then at that point, because you've been training that way, to burn your body fat as a source of fuel, which is a beautiful thing. This is why we don't have to rely on the gels and goos and things anymore, because over time you've trained your body to use that body fat. Then if you think about it, you've started the activity 30 minutes before by taking the UCAN, you're entering into the activity, you're using body fat from the get-go, so you don't have to worry about, what are the carbs that I'm relying on for fast energy to get this exercise going. So when the intensity ramps up for these kinds of athletes that I just mentioned a minute ago, that are explosive, I got to get up this hill sort of thing, and it's going to be maybe all out for 45 seconds, 1 minute, whatever, in order to make the crest of that hill. We're talking about, because you didn't use up all your carbohydrate stores and because you are fat burning, you'll have a little bit of extra carbohydrate stores to be able to do that. So your liver, your muscle glycogen, you will have some naturally in your bloodstream, not only from the UCAN, so it's kind of like a hybrid. It's not 100% that you're using your body fat. You're using that UCAN too for those intensities as well. So that's why I say trust the UCAN at the beginning. Maybe you need to use a little bit more starting out, maybe a little bit more along your rides. It depends how long you're going to be out there. But that's the beautiful thing about experimenting with it. And we love to hear your stories and what's worked and even what hasn't worked, so that we can help you better as well.
And Karin, I'm so glad you made that last point, because it's really important, like when we're talking about fat burning, to add that clarity. Like UCAN is still a carbohydrate source. Like UCAN is what's giving you energy. It's not something, some supplement or fat burner that you're drinking that's, kind of like when we, stimulating your ability to burn fat or anything like that. So when we're talking about burning fat with UCAN, we're just talking about the idea that this gives you carbohydrate at such a controlled and even rate that it's not screwing up what your body wants to do during exercise, which is burn fat. So I'm glad that you added a little clarity there. I guess we're
and you know what? I would say last point too, just to add on to that. And we talked a lot about kind of using the powders, and especially in blender bottles, and having the hydration on the bike. And that is definitely what runners are doing as well. Is mostly the powders. But I know a lot of you cyclists have iron stomachs, and a UCAN bar is also great to have on the bike. So I just didn't want to, let that go by without saying that you can kind of experiment with the bars too.
That's great, Karin. Well, as we wrap this up, maybe just one or two takeaways. You know, people leave this with a couple ideas. We spent a lot about the last 15, 20 minutes talking about endurance, but let's take it back to what we were talking about at the beginning. Top 3 ways to use UCAN to close us out. What would you suggest to people who've got the product, they're new to it, trying to figure out how does this fit into my day? What are the 3 kind of the best ways they could think about using it?
Figure out when you have that lowest energy of the day, where you just really, whether it's waking up and you have low energy and it's hard to get going, or it's middle of the afternoon, or whatever time of the day is worst for you with low energy, consider using the UCAN not just before your workouts. Doing it before your workouts is a beautiful, amazing thing that has changed the game for a lot of people, and you should do it before you work out. I don't do any activity without taking UCAN 30 minutes before, but consider taking it different times of the day too, because you know what? Then what happens is you're training your body to be adapted to using your fat stores as a source of energy, and alongside that, the UCAN for a little bit of extra energy slowly over 2 to 3 hours that sustains you, and you don't need other sources of carbohydrates too. Number 2 is if you have cravings, and a lot of people have cravings at night, or their blood sugar might be low and they don't know it, and here's that bowl of candy sitting on their coworker's desk and they feel like reaching for that, keep some UCAN bars around. Play around with different timings of UCAN and uses of UCAN. Those are my top 2. And then the last one was that one that I mentioned, just because so many people are concerned with weight management. If you are doing it, then definitely do UCAN twice a day. And it could be 2 powders. It could be, that powder with your smoothie in the morning and a bar in the afternoon. Again, whenever your energy is the lowest. We want to head that off at the pass before we get to feeling bad.
That's great. A lot of great takeaways and tips, Karin. And I think with that, we will sign off for the night. So for Varun Sriram, Karin Hosenfeld, we are very, very appreciative of all of you guys joining us. Brian, Damon, thanks so much for your questions. Lauren, thanks so much for writing in. And we're going to try to do these more often. So hopefully every week or two, Karin and I will get on here and really make this, the opportunity for all you guys to ask us your questions and come on live and chat with us. We love chatting with real folks and hearing kind of your real experiences, helping you guys troubleshoot it. So that's what we're here for. That's what we want to do. So thanks to you all for giving up your time, spending an hour now with us. And Karin, thank you. Enjoyed it.
Thanks, you guys. Thanks for all your questions, and tell your friends. We'll be on again. We'll see you soon.
We'll see you soon, guys. And everyone who signed up will get a recording of this by email shortly, so you can stay tuned for that. Thanks, everyone. Have a good evening.
Good night.